Hi, everyone. So in the most recent one of these, I talked about the three worst inventions of all time as I see it. Obviously, this is an opinionated piece, but in my opinion, the worst invention of all time is AI. And as I was recording that, I had something specific in mind, but I didn't talk about that specific thing because it would have taken way too much time. I feel like it deserves an entire video of its own, which is this video, but I still need to set it up a little bit. Which means we have to go back to my second to most recent video, which is called The Homogeneous Fantasy Accent. And in that one, I talked about how the upper class English accent is just the staple for, fantasy shows, fantasy movies, fantasy audiobooks, like fantasy fill in the blank, fantasy everything. That's how the characters speak, but it almost never fits the protagonist's station in life. So I just find it weird that it's become, the way they all speak. But then what happened when I posted it was fascinating because it's probably the most, prickly, ego-ruffling video I've ever done. And I had no troll posts. There's no troll comments about it. Especially the English folk who commented. They were so courteous. They were just articulating their disagreement in the most compassionate, even-tempered way. And I feel like that's what the creators of the internet had in mind. That's not the internet we got, but in this case, I was so impressed by my species. And usually I'm discouraged by them. I've talked about trolls a lot in the past. I've talked about that species, but this made me wonder something new about them, which is, are there geographical differences in troll population? I know there's no such thing as like a genetic troll. There's no such thing as a troll. But the figurative internet troll, are there different, countries and regions within countries that where like the cultural values kind of rear more of them? My hunch is the US is probably disproportionately high, and within the US, California is probably troll country. That's where I live, but I don't know. I'm not an expert here, and it's peripheral to the topic. The point is, in the comments section of that video, of my fantasy accent video, I had a conversation with somebody who was not an English member of that class. He was from India, and he was so nice. Actually, I don't know if it was a he or she. And we eventually disagreed on something. The conversation went on for a while, but that disagreement was so cordial, and I'm glad we got to that point. I'm glad we finally did disagree, because again, this is what the internet was meant to be, what it was meant to accomplish, is people sharing ideas and being able to express alternative views in a really civil way. But on the day I wrote my latest comment to him, or to her, to that individual, I got an email from YouTube about auto-dubbing my videos in other languages, and that is the specific thing I had in mind when I recorded that video about AI being the worst invention of all time. On top of a huge heap of other reasons, other abominations. I know, AI serves good functions too, but among the terrible functions it serves, auto-dubbing strikes me as more abominable than any snowman. And I've talked about something really similar in the past. On Halloween of 2024, I posted one of my journals. It was titled The Ethics of Book Translations. And a lot of what I said there applies here, but there's still more to say, and so I'm going to say it. But first, a summary of what I was saying there is, there are countless books that have been translated into, I guess countable language, but a lot of different languages. And most of them I actually don't think are ethical. I think some of them are. One of the greatest books I've ever read is The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and that was written in French, and so obviously I'm just delighted that it was translated. I could praise that book for an hour, but nothing I'm saying here, nothing I've said in any of these videos compares with the works of Victor Hugo. And the same is true with Joe Rogan. He's never released a video that is as important as a Victor Hugo novel, or like Mr. Beast, pick your YouTuber, not even their mothers can honestly say that their translations are as important as, I don't know, Scott Fitzgerald or Oscar Wilde or, I don't know, Shakespeare or whatever. So all that would happen is we would have this flood just washing into these other cultures wherever we translate it. And so I think it's important that we have language levies intact, because if we don't, the victims are the locals. Okay, there are locals right now in whatever regions, whatever cultures where these languages are spoken, who are currently building an audience with other members of their community, and they will drown. When you get these pointless U.S. videos flooding in, these videos that have no understanding of, let alone like empathy for these cultures, they will drown. I mean, these are just more casualties of big tech. Underneath the sort of relentless march, they're just being trampled under big tech. And that's what I object to, is these ludicrously wealthy companies just trespassing wherever they want with moral impunity, and the collateral damage, it's stunning. I mean, it's devastating. They'll trample over anything of value for $1. But also what I object to is the small creator, the individual creators, not these huge companies, but anybody who selfishly, or at least thoughtlessly, thinks like, oh, this is a good thing. I'll translate my videos to like, I don't know, Indonesian and Turkish and Czech and Hindi and Portuguese, and this will like expand my audience. I'll make it global. I'm gonna crush it in like Pakistan and the Philippines and Vietnam. Okay, but this is the same thing as like Walmart and Amazon just invading ma and pa communities and just running every local mama and papa out of business. And people pretend to oppose, like vehemently, they pretend to oppose things like this until they see an opportunity to profit from it themselves. And then it's like their earlier condemnation was an instruction manual for their future behavior. It seems like such an obvious contradiction to criticize Lyndon B. Johnson's handling, like ravaging of Vietnam, but then be excited about the prospect of deploying every US YouTube channel into their homes. I mean, come on. I feel like selfishness is the biggest problem we have today. It's been the biggest problem forever, I'm sure, but today's resources make it so much more devastating. So I will not be translating my YouTube channel into other languages. And does my lack of translation matter? Nope. Not in any measurable way, at least, because I'm not Amazon, I'm not Walmart, I'm not Mr. Beast, I'm Ma and Pa, and it only matters if the Joe Rogans of the English-speaking world decline auto-dubbing, and of course they won't. Obviously, they're going to blast their videos into every language and home they possibly can, trampling over every community, for $1. But at least my boot prints, won't be left on those communities. My ma and pa footprints won't go treading where they don't belong. But that's all I wanted to say. So I hope, despite technology, despite greed and selfishness, I hope you manage somehow to find yourself in a local community with local values and local culture that somehow predominates. All right, I'll see you next time.